English video lesson somehow. All are coming up.
Hello, check.
Udisha and Sufia, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
But why can't we? They are on unmute. You heard them? Okay, great. Can you, Sufia, can you speak once again?
Yes. Anamika,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yeah. What do you see your name appearing as? Your own name or some other name?
No, some other name, Divesh.
Yeah. Can you change it? Can you rename it?
Okay.
Saad, are you here?
Yeah, my name is also coming as Divesh. I'm Arup Sharma.
Can you rename yourself, Saad? Arubda, you can also rename yourself.
Let me
Can you switch on
check.
your video, Arubda?
Rename, yes. Name option is there. Yes. Let me just try.
I can see Wong. Wong, you can hear?
I can hear very well.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, great. Only person I don't see here is Saad. Yes, Arubda, fine, perfect.
Yeah.
Fine.
I won.
Who can be this?
Yeah, I'm Arup Sharma.
Saad, if you are there, can you unmute yourself because you are appearing in another name? And if you can switch on your video. Professor Arup is there. Dr. Sufia is there. Dr. Weng is there. And no, all of them have changed. We have only these people: Udisha, Weng, Arup Sharma, Sufia. The only person I am not able to identify is only Saad hasn't joined.
Yeah. But there's a machine there, but no coffee. No coffee. Okay.
But it's required.
To wake
But we will wake you up.
We'll wake you up.
Nobody can say no.
I sent him a mail.
Yeah, he sent a mail.
No, or not.
It's good.
No, because they
Because I
decided
didn't know this one. I was going to Tarawa and then I asked Professor Babel. He said, no, you have to come this way. But you mentioned that it's
Near the lunch
restaurant.
box.
Yeah.
I have joined his. Can you?
I think he's the best.
Yes, that's right. I can understand. You basically
Yeah, better you give it.
Better you give it.
We make an announcement.
Divesh, but he's muted as well as no video.
Can you request to run on the video from
Yeah, I have sent him a message. He's reading it.
just find out what's going on. Hi.
You're supposed to start at 9:20?
Yes.
That's a minute away.
Yes, that's actually not even that. Let's start. We're missing one person online. Saad from Pakistan. The rest have come online. They're all functional. So make space.
Hello.
Saad, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Saad, can you just rename yourself because it's coming as a different name, I guess.
I don't know what's.
If you just right click and it should be a rename. Oh, yes, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can hear us, right, clearly?
My bad.
So my
bad.
request to all of you is if you can keep your video on, we're just going to start in just like 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we are good.
Our time is 10:40.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
And
we'll start now.
try to finish and we'll start now. It's okay. You know, or you have it. I mean, you want to take that side. It's better.
Where is she Radha? No, I'm looking for Radha. Divesh, I need Radha. Can you send her a message? She's here.
she's the
Oh,
one.
that's Radha. Hey, hey. And Joydeep. And here's one more. Fida.
Vida is missing. I'll go and check.
Fida maybe is in that place, coffee corner.
I'll just go and check.
One of the panelists is there.
We have a post-carbon event tonight. Are you joining? Post-carbon,
Oh, yeah.
post-climate tonight. Looks like Anjal, somebody died. Somebody in the family died, so he has to rush to, Bangalore. So something he was writing just now. I saw him.
So he wants you to join, I think, or something, or you are
No,
already there.
I'm already there.
He asked me to join. I'm not sure at 4:30 we are invited.
Yeah, he just said his death in the family and to leave. Not be able to join. Yeah, he said that if you want, I can speak. Because I'm like, I request her to speak. He dropped a message to us in the
He
group.
already sent the mail. Oh no.
No, he hasn't committed. It's at 6 o'clock,
6 Bangkok time.
Bangkok time. So this is next. And
Yeah.
And the red one is the.
Just 1 second.
Yeah, it's couple of people.
that side.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us in this session. Is hydropower a game changer? We are focusing mostly on the South Asian countries. As you can see on the screen, we have a few panelists joining online, apart from those who are joining offline. Since there is a time constraint, I will not introduce all the panelists in detail. Therefore, we have it here for you to know, and as yesterday I mentioned, you can just, they are all famous people, you can Google their name and you can get all about them. So we have representation from all the most of the South Asian countries, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, China, Southeast Asia, and which one I missed? Bangladesh, sorry for that. So we have representation of all these countries. The session is organized by Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati in India, University of Geneva, and IHE Delft DUE PC program. So this would be co-hosted by me. I'm Professor Anamika Barua from IIT Guwahati, and my colleague Dr. Sumit Vij, who is from University of Geneva. And we also have one very young colleague, Debesh Belvase, who is from FAU, and also doing his master's in AIT. So let me just very quickly go through what we are going to focus on this panel. As you can see, the panel basically is trying to talk about implication of hydropower development in South Asia. Why we felt that this panel discussion is needed at this time of the hour is because we all know that all the countries have made a lot of commitments in the recent COP, and hydropower is considered to be one of the ways to mitigate climate change. It also provides us an opportunity to adopt by enhancing water security from the point of view, if you look at it as a storage. Given that whether really hydropower is the future for the South Asian countries is something that we want to discuss, as we know that it has both positive and negative impact. But why there are so much of resentment, in spite of that we all agree that it is one of the clean source of energy given the time that we are in. We have broadly a few questions, which Sumit is going to delve more into detail, but very quickly, these are the 4 questions broadly we want to focus on, and we expect our panelists to reflect upon, is why hydropower development across South Asia is a subject of public and state controversy. How does the size of the hydropower project matters? Who captures the positive impacts, who incurs the negative impacts? And can transboundary cooperation, as most of these rivers where we are focusing on are rivers which are shared by 2 or more nations, can cooperation help us reducing the social and environmental impacts for the riparians? When we start the panel discussion, I am going to then introduce you to the online participants who are already online here. May I now invite Sumit to just delve a little bit more on this? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anamika. Can we just go to the next slide, please? Yeah, next one. No?
Oh. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Very quickly, like Anamika said, I'm just going to quickly set the context, taking just 5 to 6 minutes from now. The key arguments which we are trying to make, and we want to deliberate further with all of you in the room, is to first look at why hydropower is back on the political and policy agenda, especially after the World Commission of Dams in the early 2000s. Okay, I have to move here. I'll come here. Is that okay? All right. Sorry. So my argument, the first argument is that why dams are back, or hydropower development projects are back on the political and the policy agenda. I think there are a couple of arguments. We'll make 3 of them here. The first one is that the climate change awareness has increased in South Asian countries, and I think that's real. We have COP27 representatives here who have been there. It was It's very timely. But what has also happened with the increase of awareness is that the popularity for green energy has also gone up. And I think that's one of the key arguments which a lot of policy actors, but also politicians are making why we need hydropower. The second is that what particularly the literature and the scholarship is talking about is that although hydropower is considered as a green energy, as a mitigation and adaptation measure, but I think there's also a hidden agenda there that it is not just a mitigation measure, but also as a development effort for reducing poverty. And I think it's still on the agenda of a lot of people. But the question comes, is there an evidence for that? I think that's an interesting question. And if there is an evidence, what kind of social and environmental cost does it incur? I think there's a lot of contestation around that. And I think especially in the South Asian, if you look at the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, where a lot of rivers emerge from the Tibetan autonomous region of Tibet, there is also seismic activities there. So how do we see that? How do we see this puzzle? The third, which is the most important aspect of which is emerging now, and which has also emerged in the early 90s and the late 90s, is that the political economy of hydropower. I think that's an interesting aspect. And one of the key things which has now emerged is that there are almost 70 leading financial institutions who have adopted the Equator Principles, and they are created by IFC from the World Bank. And they are basically private institutions, private company, who are meant for profits, and they see hydropower development plans as profit-making enterprise. So what about the transparency there? What about the political economy there? I think we have to also look into that. But considering all these 3 points, what we see is that the arguments which were made against the hydropower development is kind of disappearing, kind of diluting. And I think that's the interesting aspect of why is it diluting? What are the key questions behind that? Next slide, please. I'm just going to stop here, but these are the 2 key aspects before I stop. I want to focus. It's about the question of justice. Of course, hydropower has the aspect of bringing energy security in some sense, but to what level and to whom? I think that's a bigger question. So who are these actors for whom hydropower will bring justice or will bring injustice? People living in towns and cities like Delhi, who gets water, who gets energy from 300 kilometers from Tehri Dam, for them definitely there is some kind of security there. But what about people living around the dams? That's a bigger question. And what are their interests? The second is going back to the benefits and what are the impacts. I think we still go to those fundamental questions. Of course, the benefits are highlighted very clearly, but the impacts are not. And I think that's where the contestation also lies. And this is where I'm going to stop with the key arguments around conflicts and contestations about hydropower development. I'm going to stop here, Anamika, but let's, I think, open up, bring the panelists, and start over.
So thank you, Sumit. Can I just invite the panelists to please come here? Dr. Fida Malik Khan from Bangladesh, Joydeep Gupta from the Third Pole, Radha Wangle from Nepal. And is it by any chance possible to see the online participants here? Saurav, if you could just help. So we have Dr. Arup Kumar Sharma from India, IIT Guwahati, Dr. Sufia Khanun from Bangladesh, Saad Tamad from Pakistan, and Udisa Saklain from Nepal, who are joining us online. So we have a really long panel, so I request all of the panelists to please stick to the time. Let me just begin asking the first question to you, Joydeep. Joydeep is also working in a very big media house, which is the Third Pole. And the question that we have for you, Joydeep, is, as Sumit mentioned, that there are so much of resentment around hydropowered plants, hydropower development. You work so much with people and you have seen the impacts of these dams as well. So given that, what is the reason behind it, how it manifests? That's what we would like to know from you.
Thank you, Anamika. Okay, given in the interest of time, I will keep my answers very brief. The simple answer to your question is that it's an issue of who wins and who loses. So what we have been finding, and this is not just in South Asia, definitely in South Asia, but all over the world, we have been finding that what we are called project affected people are the ones who keep losing, whereas both the energy and the water supplies move away, sometimes even away from the basin, definitely for electricity, and go to another set of people. And that essentially is at the root of the resentment and the objections and the protests. So if you lost your house because a dam was being built and that power went to the state secretariat in Guwahati and the water went to a farmer in Dhubri, I don't think you would be very happy, and I do think you would be protesting, and that's exactly the reason for the resentment.
Thank you, Joydeep. So Radha, you heard what Joydeep mentioned, and we understand that Nepal is also a powerhouse of hydropower, and you also represent your government. So how do you look at this controversy around, because you need it, but there are so many impacts around it. So from Nepal point of view, how would you put it?
Thank you for this opportunity. I agree with our former colleague who expressed about the disappointment of people, how they are impacted from the dam and other projects. I think we need to see the problem from the perspective of climate, from the perspective of poverty, from the perspective of inequality, because people are in multiple crises, and we need to address all those crises one at a time. And in our context, many people they are depend upon natural resources, not only the water resources, but if we make a dam or any development project, the people might be affected to utilize the local resources, not only the water resources. That affects the people. So we need to consider about their use right, their livelihood first, and consider the development issue later on. But after all, what is the development? Development should be for the sake of people. That's why Nepal government is trying to consider the people's perspective by utilizing the environmental impact assessment and some other process. But the question is the EIA, environmental impact assessment, is not that much functional. It is like a ritual. We do the environmental impact assessment in the beginning while we start the project, but later on the implementation aspect of this EIA is not so functional. Thank you.
Can you give that microphone to the... I think, Sumit, you have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Actually, now we will move to the online panel. I have a question to Professor Arup Kumar Sharma. And the question is basically looking at the few aspects of not so much on the environmental cost, but the social cost, which both the panelists raised. The question is that do engineers, while planning, or the hydropower planners as such, while planning the project, do they consider such kind of social costs, and how the sites are decided for the hydropower projects? That is the question. If yes, then what kind of social cost is understood and included in the planning process? And if not, why not?
When you are saying engineer, I would like to take some time that engineer, though it is a Latin word and it basically means the talent, skill or cleverness kind of thing. But this discipline itself was in military first until on 1818 in London, the Institute of Civil Engineers declared this as civil engineering. So that was done for benefit, that they found that this kind of things can be used for benefit of the society or for the civil service, civil society. So that way they have the moral responsibility to look into the benefit of the society. and with growing concern of environment. Earlier it was, say, public health engineering kind of things. Now it has grown a lot and it has become, say, environmental engineering is taught, ecological engineering is taught. So many engineering colleges or institute has this kind of discipline. So that way, environmental consideration is a must in any civil engineering project. And then coming to hydropower, it is always better if we can go for a multi-purpose project to get societal benefit and to mitigate climate change. Right? Basically, why I am talking about the mitigation of climate change, because spatio-temporal variation is increasing with climate change, spatio-temporal variation of water availability. Now, if it is a multi-purpose project, so we can provide water in the lean period and then we can store water in the other time when we have plenty of water. So that kind of things are coming in. And then when we consider climate erosion, carbon emission or say sink, then in hydropower, of course, because of submergence, as we all know that forests get submerged, so climate sink part is getting down. But again, reservoir has the potential of climate sink. For pond is already well established. Research are going on in that line. What is the function of reservoir in that direction? Microclimate moderation is there. But so far emission is concerned, that you all know that it is, next to wind energy, say hydropower energy is considered as better as compared to any fossil fuel based power kind of things. Now it is a need of power, how much, that's another important point. And in engineering discipline, as you are asking that how it is improving, and that now with GIS and remote sensing, people can identify a better site where less submergence will be there. So a lot of things can be seen beforehand. And otherwise also the concept
Professor
of
Arup, I think you made the point. We will come back to you. We will come back to you, but it's a very interesting point, and that actually takes us to you, Fida, because you are the lowest riparian if we look at particularly the rivers which are coming from China, India. And we also heard what Professor Arup Sharma mentioned, and also the co-panelists of yours who are sitting here. So given this, for Bangladesh, what is most important? Access to clean source of energy, or you also have to make sure that social and environmental impacts are taken care of? And we would also like to know from you about the EIA, because that's very important for your country.
Yeah. Thank you, Anamika. Definitely hydropower has a positive and a negative impact both in the economy, environment and the society. But as a lower riparian country, definitely there is a huge impact in Bangladesh if there is any kind of intervention in the upstream. But if you see the recent war, Ukraine and Russia, and also during a preparation of National Adaptation Plan, I think the most important is how we can adapt for the lower riparian country. So I think it's a new opportunity, to harness the hydropower, so that there will be an impact, but we have to minimize the impact by doing the strategic environmental assessment. EIA is, once you decide the projects, then we used to do the EIA study, but if you can go for the regional strategic environmental assessment, definitely that will give you the opportunities for the options with the less, the impact in the regions and how we can harness the hydropower. I have just gone through one of the documents of the Joint River Commissions where I can see there is a huge potentiality of these regions. I think that 189,000 megawatts of electricity, out of that 83 in the Nepal, 83,000 and 75,000 in India and 30,000 in Bhutan. But unfortunately, there is no potentiality in Bangladesh. But I'm not sure that we can harness all these opportunities. But if we can harness some of the part, then definitely the region will be secured in terms of the climate, in terms of the flood mitigations, and also the hydropower generations. The nexus of the energy, water, and the climate security is very important for these regions. So what we need, building the trust among the regions, especially with the Bangladesh, as we are in the lower riparian country. If I recall the 2011, the framework agreement between India and Bangladesh, in the Article 4, it is clearly mentioned that we had to cooperate for the electricity generation, transmission, and the distribution within these regions, within these two countries, and also from the renewable and the other sources of the electricity. I think, and also if you see the BBIN, the concept, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, in 2016 there was a meeting in Dhaka, and they discussed the potentiality of the hydropower and also the water resource management. But you see that nothing has happened. I think the most important as a lower ASEAN country as Bangladesh, that building trust through joint study. And this joint study will building the trust among the regions. And also we have to keep in our mind that these regions is dependent, these three mighty basins, the Ganges, Brahmaputra and the Meghna. I think more than 700 million people are dependent, and the ecosystem services, and many ways these three rivers are providing the services. So I think that most important is to carry out the joint study, which will build up the confidence among the regions in the track 1, track 2, and the track 3 level peoples, the local peoples, the marginal peoples, and definitely we can overcome this situation, and we can prepare and secure the security of these regions.
Thank you.
As this is the spirit of this conference. Thank you, Anamika.
Thank you for that. That's a very interesting perspective from the downstream, and based on that, I think now we will move to the upstream. We have a question for Wong-Ling Wong now. Wong, we have a question. Considering all the downstream impacts which Fiza just mentioned and all the nuances around that, how does China, because they have been building dams in the recent past and they continue to do so, how do they reduce the resentment within the country but also with the other countries, the riparians? Could you please reflect on that?
Thank you for the question. And I do feel it's an interesting question, particularly since it was proposed by the well-experienced professors who work in the field for decades. This question actually reminds me 20 years ago, the first lecture which helps me to understand the difference between international rivers and other rivers. The professor simply posted a geomorphic map of a watershed on the wall, then asked all the students, if you are the watershed manager, where will you build a dam to store the water, to control the flood, to help the navigation? I think the answer is really obvious. All of you could give the answer immediately. Then he put a national boundary on the map to divide the watershed into upstream and downstream countries. Then he told us we all live in the downstream countries. Now you have to choose the location again, then write on paper to reason it. So if you are interested, you can also look into the location of the Dibang Valley Dam, which have been approved by Indian government. So I think after the courses and after years of experience, I'm working in the international rivers with China and its boundary countries. There are two principles I can see clearly has been concluded from the lectures, also rarely be followed by Chinese government. The first principle is seeking the truth from the facts. There are many facts about the dam operated in China I really want to share, but due to the time constraint, I have to shorten it to the one related to social resentment. So most social resentment is rooted in the feeling of insecure. Then dam safety would be the issue for discussion. I have been questioned by officials from Laos and NGOs from Thailand about this, and in the past. My answer is China always follow the national standards to ensure the dam safety. It's not only for downstream countries, but also for the Chinese township right behind the dam. Due to the nature of the law, if anything happens, the flood will firstly hit a Chinese town and village, then reach further downstream parts, which is it will be much smaller impact. And China has one of the most complex regulation system referring to dam safety in the world. The other principle is a human community with a shared future. This principle implements based on collaboration, participation, and shared benefits. This brings me back to the interesting part of the question, which made two assumptions. The first assumption is all impacts seems are negative and should be reduced. And the second is China is the only one received the benefits. So how about the benefits of the flood reduction? How about irrigation during the lean season? How about the possible navigation? Do those who receive the benefits from the water have the obligation to support those who pay the costs? If dam building across the world were a rational measure to mitigate climate change and reduce the flood to increase irrigation, then the question, I think, should alter to
Thank you, Wong. We will come back to you. You have raised several interesting points, and I'm sure many of you, including Joydeep, I can see his face, so there will be a lot of reaction to it. So thank you so much, Wong. May I now just go to Saad? Saad, you heard all this conversation, and can you give us a reflection from the point of view of not just Pakistan, but overall, how do you really see South Asia's future in terms of climate change adaptation and mitigation from the point of view of hydropower development?
Sure. Thank you, Anamika, and thank you, everybody. Apologies, I couldn't be there in person. So I think this is I think the age that we live, we all have to be very cognizant of replications of whatever we do with our ecosystem. And with the ecology of our sort of habitat, right? In terms making our future more secure. So when I say that, when I read the question, Pakistan is defined by the Indus Basin. 90% of Pakistan lives on the Indus Basin. It's got 5 rivers, which are draining the water from the Himalayas and the Hindu Kush to the sea. And a major part of that water comes from melting of glaciers and then the monsoons, which sort of come in when they hit the mountains. It rains and then sort of the river becomes more active, more alive. But I feel if you dam the river, you're not going to protect it from floods. The reason is that when you look at the basin in Pakistan's context, the monsoon is changing direction. Had we put many dams on the Indus in the north, that's where we can make most of our dams. This time the monsoons didn't go north; they went south, and that's why the flooding happened. It happened in the lower part of the basin. So that argument that we used to make that dams would protect us from floods doesn't hold. But when it comes to energy security, I was reading up yesterday in detail, and I sort of realized that for Pakistan, the hydropower was a true game changer when in the 1960s, when Pakistan did that Indus water treaty with India. Now it's not. Now you could call necessity. But I say that it's not a game changer. I know it's cheap. I know it has a low carbon footprint. But the thing is, dams, especially hydropower, cross-subsidizes bad behavior, right? When we were sort of peaking at hydropower, 2/3 of our energy mix was hydro. Now it's 1/3. The other 2/3 is carbon. So even though hydropower gives you cheap energy, it boosts economic growth, social mobility, social development, all of that. But it also cross-subsidizes bad behavior, right? Okay. And because of that, I think it's not a game changer, but it's a necessity. A true game changer would be like the true renewables, like solar, wind, in my opinion.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Saad. So, we had kind of set a context, and we had some similar opinion, some different opinion. Can we open it up for the audience now to, if you have any question, two quick questions we would like to take. Yeah, you can either make it for all, or if you have a specific question.
Yeah, hi, I'm Stefano from WWF. I mostly work in the Mekong region, but this is an extremely interesting discussion for me because of the similarities. The political economy part is really interesting, but I wouldn't touch on that. I just want to just flag one thing about hydropower and climate change, which is, I haven't heard it so far. Dams and their operations are not immune to climate change itself. And one of the biggest problems is how they are going to do it with potential droughts and the water regimes that is changing. And you're committing to hard infrastructures that is going to stay for hundreds of years, have extreme impact on environment and social, and then you don't really know how that's actually going to perform and whether you're even going to recover your cost. And I'm interested to hear from all of the panelists what they think and whether it is really a game changer under like changing climate. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. We will come to the panelists to react to that. Is there any other quick question? Yeah, very quickly.
Thank you. I'm Arfanuzzaman from Bangladesh. So I have some interest in this hydropower session, and I'm following this issue for last several years. So my quick question is, we already know hydropower is affecting the upstream and downstream relationship. And the biggest question is, how can we ensure the benefit of downstream region in the river that have dam and hydropower? And how can you provide incentive to the affected region and also the dam affected the community where the dam is located?
Right, how will it have an impact? Maybe Professor Sharma can think about the answer. Yeah, one last question quickly, if there is any other question. Okay. So anybody would volunteer to take any of this question or add to what has been?
I think that definitely there is impact on the dam construction in the upstream and also in the downstream.
Just the panelists.
But what I'm trying to say that if you can able to do the strategic environmental assessment for the whole regions, then you can get some of the options that which option will give you the less impact in both in the downstream and also the upstream. Because of the recent war, Ukraine and Russia, I mean, we have a huge energy security problem in Bangladesh, not only Bangladesh, but the whole regions. Yeah. So I think if you can have the regional cooperations by building the trust, by building the joint study, and if you can see that, okay, how we can minimize the impact, then only it could be a game changer for the regions. I'm not telling that still that we have to do the hydropower, but at least we can see the opportunities as the things are happening in this way.
Thank you, Fida. So we do see an opportunity. Professor Sharma, quickly, because we have to reach to everybody, quickly.
Okay. This is downstream and upstream because we being in India, we are downstream of China and upstream of Bangladesh. So there are a lot of technologies coming up. And then, like for diurnal variation is one issue when hydropower dam are constructed. But we have developed some technology that will mitigate the diurnal variation completely. So that way, engineering technologies are coming up. But then with cooperation of all, with holistic study, we can find out there are work that can help in mitigating downstream impact.
Okay.
I'm not talking about physical impact. Physical impacts are also there, like scouring of the bed and all this thing that can be handled. But I'm talking about social impact. So that can also be mitigated. Now, quantification of the loss is another very big issue that need to be done by another discipline. Like what are intangible loss that an engineer cannot find out. So there the collaboration is needed. What are the intangible losses to the society? And so, because to bring a new concept in a project, you need money. Now to get money, cost-benefit analysis. If the benefit is seen in terms of adding that intangible loss which is there, then your benefit is justified. So this is one of the important points where the very detailed study or collaboration.
Got it, Professor Sharma, thank you. Thank you very much. So we are talking a lot about cooperation, joint study, organizing, all this itself is a very big challenge, but technology itself plays an important role. I have a question to all the panelists, but I want you to respond in just 1 minute. are we against hydropower dams, or are we against the impacts that the dams bring? If we minimize the impacts of the dam, can we think that yes, it is important to have such kind of environmental friendly dams? So may I start with Joydeep quickly? Yeah.
I have no reason to support hydropower dams as they are planned and constructed today. They are so badly planned, designed, executed, implemented that they're an unmitigated disaster.
Radha. Actually, I am not the scientist who can tell whether the dam is okay or not, but what I would like to suggest is we need to see the vulnerability risk analysis perspective. We need to respect that report. In our country's context, we have that VRA report, but that suggested we need to go for run-up river type. But many of the, I don't know, the hydropower developers, they want to go with the dam, but I'm not sure that why they want to go against the science. We need to respect the science.
Right. I'll come to you, Fida. Wong, can you respond to that?
Yeah.
You have to unmute yourself, Wong. Wong? Yeah.
Take a holistic and systematic approach to identify which dam is necessary. And I'm not support any specific dam or just against any dams. I think we need to make a trade-off, balance out the benefits. And the other thing, I think we need existing system which could channelize the vulnerable groups for making process, then to divide them more quickly. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Saad, quickly, yes or no? I know I will not get, everybody's very diplomatic here, but some kind of a response we get to understand.
So, no. The reason is many solutions in place today, more nature-based, more green infrastructure. I would have said yes if it was 4 decades ago, because back then our only option would have been to burn fuel and make electricity.
Okay, okay. Yeah, got you. Yeah. Professor Sharma, very quickly. Yes or no?
Yeah. We need development, we need good environment, both we need.
Yes.
So we need sustainable development, and them need to be reoriented, redesigned or reconceptualized, them or whatever it is, to have that kind of development, sustainable, environment-friendly development.
Okay, okay. To you, Fida, quickly.
Yeah, I think that if we can minimize the negative impact, definitely I think that we should go for the dam, but the benefits should be shared among the countries.
Okay, thank you. Any reaction from this side? Okay, Dinesh.
There are many reactions. First of all, I must congratulate that...
they can't hear otherwise.
Many reactions. I am Dinesh Kumar from India. Just I want to begin with saying that I think the way these questions have been framed, it was done beautifully, and congratulations to Anamika and Sumit. Now the question of whether we need dams or not, I think I think Professor Asad Biswas, whom many of you might be, familiar with the name, was a winner of the Stockholm Water Prize and many international awards.
But we don't have much time, Dinesh. Quickly.
But yeah, just he said once that the question of whether you want dams or not, that's not the question that we need to pose. I think how we build dams smartly.
Yes.
With the very minimum environmental and social consequences. That's a big challenge. But we need dams.
Yes.
Development requires dams, especially countries like India, China. But I was, some years ago, we were doing an analysis of 40,000 large dams around the world. 40,000 large dams around the world. We're just plotting a chart which shows the relationship between the reservoir storage in those large dams and the submergence area. We found a straight line, basically meaning there is no relationship between the storage and the submergence area. How does this happen?
Very interesting.
This basically happens because it basically means, it doesn't mean that increase in storage will not lead to increase in surface or submergence. It basically means many dams were built in locations where the submergence per unit of storage is very less.
whereas many dams were built in locations where the submergence per unit storage is very high.
Okay.
That's why the reason. So it all depends
Okay.
on how you build
Dinesh,
dams.
I'm so sorry. I
that's
have
what-
to stop you.
just-
Otherwise, they will not give us lunch, the organizers. So let us just quickly, so what we are going to do quickly here is that we have 3 more people, as you can see. They have their own expertise. So first I would like to invite Professor Thakal, who is from AIT, but the reason he is here is because he is a lead author of IPCC Working Group 3, which is on climate mitigation. So I would like to hear from you, I as in the House would like to hear from you, what is your perspective on this, given the discussion we had from IPCC point of view? You can also come here.
Yeah, first of all, very good morning to all of you. I think it's a pleasure. Thank you, Anamika, for giving some chance to share my thoughts. It's a very enlightened set of panelists. I don't know what I can add, but let me add from the perspective of science a little bit. If you look at IPCC 6th assessment report, it clearly says that the hydropower is essential part of 1.5 degree future, which works together with other set of renewable energy technology, especially with the wind and the solar, where the potential for mitigation is very, very high. Compared to the wind and solar, the mitigation potential of hydropower itself is much less compared to the wind and solar, but it is essential part of our low carbon future. So in that sense, we must bring it forward because this is very clean. And of course, clean means it's not a zero carbon as such, as you know, because of the many dam and many other things. I think a lot of studies are there which says that hydropower still have some carbon footprint. I think, if I'm correct, around 20 to 23 gram of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour, which if you compare with the gas, it's about 490. So, but it's still very, very, very useful renewable energy resources for us to move forward. And also, if you look at the SDG targets, UNESCAP released the SDG report, progress towards SDG report recently, which says that there are a couple of SDGs which we are not in path to meet those SDGs, especially SDG 7.2.1, which is renewable energy share. Actually, we are regressing rather than progressing. We are going negative direction. If you look at SDG 13.2.2 regarding emission, we are also actually going negative swing rather than a positive. So given all these directions, the role for hydropower is very important. And now globally it's very important, and it's a part of our clean energy future. Now, if you look at regionally, South Asia, also I happen to come from Nepal, so we have seen that. I think our colleague from Bangladesh very, very well mentioned that BBIN has a huge potential in terms of cross-border power trade regionally. Nepal has 45,000 megawatt technology potential. Bhutan could have around 24,000 megawatt. India has some difficulty moving towards a clean energy future, given its over reliance on coal. Bangladesh is an utter energy security issue. So the power from Bhutan and India, which is hydro, can supplement Bangladesh and India. So BBIN region could be a model for regional cooperation. It's not only energy and water, but also this is an opportunity to build a regional trust, regional integration, regional, basically building trust in the region. So from that perspective, I see huge opportunity. Now, for going to a bit more now national context for Nepal, since I come from Nepal, for Nepal, hydropower is the future. There is absolutely no doubt it. But I agree that it has to be sustainable. And I don't think that making hydropower is a rocket science. It is a proven technology. It's very simply, it's an issue of operational planning and to make sure that we do in a way that we don't have a detrimental environmental and social impact. That we have to pay attention to. And also, we have done a couple of studies on cross-border power trade from Nepal. For example, recently one of our published paper in Energy Policy Journal, we have quantified that if Nepal could supply only surplus hydroelectricity to India, only surplus, not making project to export, but only surplus, because Nepal has a ROR type, run-of-the-river hydropower plant, which will spill away if we don't use. If surplus we could sell to India, we can earn $500 billion Nepalese rupees from 2021 to 2050. Already, Nepal Electricity Authority is selling through the Indian Power Exchange market. In last 8-9 months, we have earned 10 billion Nepalese rupees in last 8 months. So, and also our estimation says that India actually can reduce, let me see some number, okay. India can reduce 82 million ton of CO2 equivalent in 2021 to 2030 if India buys all surplus electricity from Nepal. So India can displace that much, taking the average emission factor of India's power system. So if we do regional cooperation, there is a huge potential, and particularly for Nepal, there are a lot of opportunities from energy security, trade balance, forex reserve, from number. Now, finally, I'll not take time. Now, what we need to do perhaps is to build a trust. I think our colleagues already mentioned it, to trust in all hydropower development, regional issue in particular. G2G mechanism alone doesn't work. G2G with B2B, to think tank to think tank, academia to academia, civil society. So we have to build multi-level trust framework. Otherwise, this is very, very vulnerable to geopolitics. I know a lot of us don't want to touch the geopolitics and political economy, but let's take it. This is a white elephant we can't avoid, right? So, but region has a huge potential, particularly South Asia, and I think this is a time that we all move towards regional cooperation, collaboration in hydropower, and of course, at least in BVIN region, I see the huge potential, and for a country like Nepal and Bhutan, this is a game changer. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dhakal. I think it's very timely of how Professor Dhakal ended it, talking about cooperation. The next speaker is Dr. Sufia Khanum. She's a fellow at BIISS Bangladesh and also a lower riparian. She has 3 minutes now. And could you please reflect on how cooperation can bring adaptation as a measure for lower riparians, but also as at the upper riparian countries in South Asia?
Thank you, Shumit and Anamika, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak for this conference. So I would like to focus some of the points I think that has not been mentioned here, and from the diplomatic perspective, as my organization is working with the diplomacy. So as we all know that the environmental extremes are increasing day by day, and it is affecting both the quality and quantity of the water. And Dr. Fida rightly mentioned that BIIN has identified, the power potentials among the South Asian countries, so we can think of it. And much of the discussion has been mentioned about the positive and negative aspects of the hydropower. I will not focus on that part, but I just want to mention here that if you consider from the social perspective that most of the vulnerable communities are actually living in this river basin, and the communities, those who are living in this river basin, they are historically vulnerable and excluded from many of the social and the economic opportunities. So we think we need to think about their security perspective as well. Like when we are thinking about the adaptation measures, that how they will take these adaptation measures to confirm their security for their livelihood, or for the security for their different aspects. And if I mention here that from the human security perspectives, they need to consider that how they can be benefited from this want and from the fear that can be produced by the different climatic extremes and the mismanagement in the riparian countries. And there is another thing, that the intangible cost, that how we can minimize this intangible cost. And as my earlier presenter has mentioned nicely, that we need we need to build the trust, and we need to build trust through the joint study. And I think as a downstream country like Bangladesh, we also need to think for our own benefit, that how we can offer the different benefits for the upper riparian countries, so that we can implement the adaptation measures regionally. And another thing, that the last point that I want to mention, that the climate change, the adaptation measures, and the river basin, both are actually the regional aspect, and we need to treat this the river basins or the transboundary water resources regionally. So I think the bilateral agreement or the bilateral cooperation or any type of bilateral agreement will not work for this, for the transboundary adaptation measures. I think regional approach is very much needed, and we need to think out of the bilateral cooperation or bilateral adaptation measures for South Asia, which is very rare in this region, and we need to think of it.
Thank you, Sophia. Yep, I think you've really raised two very important points on human security and multilateralism. With this, I think we are almost closing it, but I think we have our last speaker, Udisha. Udisha, now you've heard about all these impacts, potential, and the so-called smart hydropower. We are not sure what that does really mean, but I really want you to reflect on the political and social injustices which has been happening, and which might also happen in the future with the evolution of hydropower in South Asia. Could you please reflect on that?
Sure. Right. Thanks a lot, Sumit, for your question. So, I mean, I think the question around social and political justice and the processes that shape inequalities is being asked at a very good time, because we are witnessing a major revival of large dams in South Asia. And alongside, there is increasing empirical evidence in literature that kind of points to the fact that hydropower projects have the greatest documented energy justice implications when you compare it to any other renewable energy sources. So I think this is an important question that needs to be considered. If you're looking specifically at South Asia, so my PhD fieldwork was based largely out of Nepal. So that is where I will largely be talking about Nepal, but I think to a large extent the findings kind of applied throughout South Asia, where dams are being built. So this larger question about whether dams are good and or bad kind of nicely ties into questions of social justice, because I feel like some cases in Nepal have shown that there are some examples of enhanced distributed justice, in the sense that communities seem to be getting more benefits from dams today than was the case about 20 years ago. And by this, I mean, I think one of the fundamental game change has been of local shares in the company that actually builds the dams, so that gives access to communities to actually gain from the profits that are generated from electricity. There has also been a much more extensive planning around local development benefits. So that could be things like improving irrigation canals, constructing a concrete check dam to supply water to farmland, offering subsidized power. So all of these factors have kind of shifted at least the public perception around dams. But I think we have a long way to go when it comes to procedural justice. And by that I mean actually including marginalized communities in decision making around where the dam must be built, to how big must it be, what are the risks that are involved, and also giving political rights to people to demand rightful compensation for harms that are caused. I feel like on that end, we are lacking in a big way, which makes dams much more harmful and risky than they are projected to be at the beginning. There are some rare examples. For instance, there's the Riti and the Antikola projects in Nepal that are perhaps examples where local irrigation needs have been supported, which is one of the major reasons as to why local communities have been quite glad to allow the development of the project and have actually benefited from it. So that kind of presents a fantastic example of how hydropower can play an instrumental role in either reducing or actually exacerbating inequalities. The one point that I want to mention here actually has
Disha,
to do
you
with
have
the
to
first
quickly
slide that
conclude
you
now. Yeah,
presented.
if you could just quickly wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Just one last point, which is, I think in a big way, the way dam building has shifted in South Asia is the fact that there's a lot more involvement of private players, and but our formal policies are not in place that actually encourage or enforce greater development actions. It's left up to private companies to kind of make sure that they are engaging in best practices, and that kind of often leads to voluntary inaction. So keeping that in mind, I feel like we need to make sure that we have the right framework in place when we're actually planning a project, and to make sure that the benefits are there throughout the life cycle of the project and not just at one particular point.
Okay,
Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Udisha. This is something like writing your answer papers. You know, even if you're half done, you have to submit. So we are in that situation now. So, but you know, the idea was we will do a closing, but I think it's a subject where you can't really stop debating. But I still would like to very quickly go back to our panelists. But this is, you have to explain it, your entire thesis in half a second. So quickly tell us, anybody has any reaction to whatever we discussed, so because we would like to close it from you. Jaideep, very quickly.
Okay, so I'll not talk about anything that's been discussed before. I will just put a question to those planning hydro projects. Have you taken into consideration the acceleration of the water cycle due to climate change and therefore further uncertainties in water supply, because we are already seeing the ill effects of that on all the dams of Nepal and Bhutan?
Thank you. Saad, I want to go to you because you always get the last chance. So quickly.
So I think I, in general, agree with Joydeep in what he had said before. But I think dams are necessary, but not the only solution.
Okay. Right.
Hydropower is necessary, but not the only solution.
Great. That was very clear. Thank you. Professor Sharma, quickly. It's a test for you, if you can finish it in half a second. You have to unmute yourself. Unmute. Oh, God.
Yeah. When we talk about dam, we also talk about the contribution that is water coming from the upstream catchment. So we need to adopt ecological management practice there so that we get the required water, and downstream also operation we need to control in a way so that downstream is not affected badly.
Right.
And we need to have an optimal combination of all these to have that benefit in terms of both social benefit, economic benefit, and combining together. So we need to talk about holistic engineering.
Thank you. Wang, to you. Quickly.
So I think a holistic and systematic approach is the key. And we cannot just stay at the stage to cure the headache or cure the pain from the food. We have to cure the entire system and the body. That's all.
Yeah. Thank you. Radha and then Fida. Yeah.
Yeah, hydropower could be the game changer if we do it wisely. What we discuss here, if we consider all those things while we implement, that will be the game changer. Thank you.
Well said. Yeah.
I think the hydropower is the first step of the regional cooperations, and also I think that benefit should be shared among the countries, and we must secure our regions in terms of the energy and the water and the climate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the panels. A round of applause for all of them, please. And thank you for joining so early in the morning, Saad, Professor Sharma, and Sufia and Udisha. And thank you to all of you who've traveled all the way. Thank you so much. And thank you to the excellent audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have coffee outside this room.
Actually, I have a couple of